that correct, I hope?
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's Gramelspacher.
Gotcha.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Joe Gramelspacher, and I'm honored to be here today as a proud representative of Indianapolis Public Schools. I serve as Special Projects Director in the Office of the Superintendent, and one of my primary responsibilities is to develop and manage the district's real estate strategies. As you may know, for the last 4.5 years, IPS has been at the forefront of innovation in public education in Indiana. The district came to the General Assembly in 2013 to support groundbreaking flexibility, which provided a path to identify and implement locally led interventions in chronically underperforming schools. Since that time, IPS has partnered with promising charter school operators to restart 6 IPS schools which had persistently unacceptable results for students. The early data on the academic impact of those interventions is encouraging. Over the same time period, IPS has pursued an aggressive real estate strategy to right-size the district's operational and school building footprint. IPS has sold 12 buildings and leased an additional 5 former schools to charter and private school operators. Sales of former operational buildings have yielded over $19 million, all of which has been reinvested in the district's general fund. This strategy reduced IPS real estate holdings by over 1 million square feet, is projected to generate over $400 million in assessed valuation growth, and perhaps most importantly to us, it provided a critical cash infusion to invest in teacher compensation. For the first time in over a decade, IPS has raised teacher salaries in collective successive bargaining agreements, and with a vote of confidence from our taxpayers in November, we're poised to do more for our educators. While a significant number of property transactions have been related to operational buildings, IPS made the painful decision in 2017 to right-size the footprint of our high school facilities. Since closing John Marshall and Broad Ripple high schools, IPS has been seeking to discern the highest and best use of these properties. What has become abundantly clear is that each of these former high school sites demands a comprehensive approach to redevelopment. Each building is over 340,000 square feet and designed to serve up to 2,800 students, capacity far in excess of what any single charter school would be able to occupy in an efficient and cost-effective manner. We're here today to ask that the committee consider amending this bill to make that comprehensive redevelopment approach possible. We believe there are opportunities for a path forward at each of our 2 high school sites, which retains a valuable educational use while also contributing to the economic development and overall vitality of the communities they have long served. We're committed to a transparent public process which is aligned with community wishes. Unfortunately, the redevelopment these sites demand and that these communities deserve is not permitted under existing law if a charter school wants to buy the building, nor would it be possible under this bill. In its current form, this bill also fails to address the debt financing challenges related to sale or lease to a charter school for $1. IPS is poised to work with members of this committee on language which will permit these former high school properties to find their next life as valuable assets in their respective communities. We're also committed to a legislative solution that won't interfere with the goal of ensuring that taxpayer-funded school buildings of the right size and suitable for ongoing use as schools can be made available to charter operators in a taxpayer-friendly manner.
Thank you, Joe. Questions? Seeing, there's one. Representative Delaney.
Mr. Gramelspacher, if I understand you correctly, your concern is that a charter school, for example, that might be able to educate 400 or 500 kids could send in a letter and acquire a building set up for 2,500 kids. And in the process, leave you with the bonds to pay, I assume.
Under current law, yes, and under this proposal as well, we would still be paying the debt.
Yeah, you're on the debt. This bill does not relieve you from the debt. What is the total debt of IPS itself and its related building corporation?
I don't know our total outstanding debt. I believe it's somewhere on the order of $400 million total at this time. I can get you the actual fact, but something like that across all of our buildings.
So there's a real impact on you in taking a building that could be used for 2,500 students in another era, but no longer, on which you have debt, giving it to someone else for $1 or $1 a year, and you still pay the debt.
Yes, sir, and what we've done is studied what it would take to defease the bonds on Broad Ripple High School in particular. There's no debt attached to the John Marshall facility at this time. We also are thinking a lot about T.C. Howe, Emmerich Manual, and Emma Donans currently operate under turnaround agreements governed by the State Board of Education because some of those buildings have debt concerns as well, and we're thinking about the future of those. But at Broad Ripple, we estimate that to defease the debt attached to that building would take $5 million in cash payment. So if IPS were to sell that property for $1, IPS would have to take $5 million from either our general fund or one of our local property tax funds, transfer it to the building corporation in order to be able to consummate a sale.
Now, you use this very elegant word, defease. You mean that would pay off the debt on there, or reduce it to the point where you'd be under your loan covenants?
That is what we believe would take to reduce it, the total debt outstanding across all buildings, to allow the release of Broad Ripple High School from the building corporation back to IPS in order to sell. There's also an issue that is more complex than perhaps we'll discuss today, around the fact that our debt is tax exempt, and there would be a private use, private payment problem, even if we were to enter a lease with the charter school for $1. So if we were not to sell, we were to continue to pay down the debt on its regular schedule. Just entering a lease with a charter operator for $1 could pose problems with our debt financing.
What is the status of the charter operator that would make this happen? How are they different than your status?
So from our understanding of IRS code, charter school operator is considered a private entity for federal tax purposes. Even if it is an entity receiving public funding, or predominantly or entirely public funding, it is still considered for IRS purposes a private entity.
Put your bonds in a position of not being tax exempt?
It would certainly risk that, and we continue to study that issue with attorneys who are much more knowledgeable about this than I am, and happy to continue that conversation. But we do believe there are very significant risks to our debt financing.
I'd be happy to talk to you about how I can help you out.
Representative Baining has a follow-up question concerning the
Joe,
conversation.
regarding that issue, though, you and I have had some discussions in regards to that with you. There are ways that you could technically probably move that liability to another facility that may be unencumbered or may not have that.
Yeah, happy to share our current understanding of that process, and it is something in the buildings I mentioned that we have sold. We did sell one former school which had debt associated with it. What would have to happen in that case is that IPS would have to approach the trustee, that is the manager of our building corporation, and request that the trustee permit the transfer of so-called suitable replacement property, so moving the debt to another building. We could do that, but that would constrain our debt issuing capacity in the future, because whenever we issue debt, we have to sell buildings to the building corp to get the cash proceeds. And so we have $52 million approved by taxpayers of capital referendum debt that we can issue. That's going to take selling buildings to the building corporation. So if, for example, we transferred 2 to 3 smaller elementary schools or another high school facility that has less debt in exchange for Broad Ripple, that would be subject to the trustee's approval, which we have no control over whatsoever, and the trustee represents bondholders, and they may or may not be amenable to that. But if we were to do that, our pool of IPS-owned buildings that we could sell to the building corp to issue debt in the future would be significantly constrained. So we could find ourselves in a position where we couldn't have any new money financing, even if we got authority from taxpayers to issue referendum debt. We would have no buildings to sell to the building corp.
Thank you, Joe. Seeing no more questions.